everyone. Welcome to the JEMS Report. My name is Jeff Frankel, and I am the Managing Editor of JEMS. I want to get straight into it today. We're here to talk about the important topic of mental health. This is talk one of a two-part series we're doing, so stand by for that one, come out on a later date. We're here talking about a recent study and a recent JEMS article too. The article, Normal for Us, addressing the mental health needs of EMS professionals. That's linked below in the podcast description, so check it out after you watch this talk. The link to the study is also in the article as well, so be sure to check that out for the original source material. Now, joining today are Dr. Robin Jacobowitz and Alanna Badgley. Both wear many hats here, so I'll let them introduce themselves. First, Robin, then Alanna.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk about this really important study, so I'm glad it's getting some time. As Jeff said, I'm Robin Jacobowitz. I am the Interim Director of the Institute for Disaster Mental Health at SUNY New Paltz. I was also recently with the Benjamin Center, also at SUNY New Paltz, and I'm the primary author of the New York State Mental Health Needs Assessment, which was commissioned by the Division of Homeland Security and was conducted in 2024. So I have a background in public policy and research, mostly research in public education and mental health, and have done a bunch of work in those areas. I work with a lot of regional school districts with a focus on education and mental health. So I'm really happy to be here and happy to be able to talk about this particular research project.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm Alanna Badgley. I am an active duty paramedic in New York. I've been in EMS for 15 years as of this month, which feels kind of crazy to hit that milestone. And I also am the president of IAEP Local 20, so the International Association of EMTs and Paramedics. We represent about 900 members in the Hudson Valley region of New York State. And I also have a few other hats. I'm a national representative of IAEP, as well as a national executive board member of the National Association of Government Employees, which is the union in which IAEP resides. So I do have a few hats and disclosures there, but just happy to join and be a part of this conversation because mental health has always been at the forefront of my my role. I see it as a union leader.
Right. And it's funny, as I said before, we all wear many hats here, me included. So it's nice to hear that you do too. You do a great job for medics in your community and around the state too. So thank you for that. To get into it, Robin, can you give us an overview of the study and what motivated it, please?
Sure. The New York State First Responder Mental Health Needs Assessment was conducted by the Benjamin Center and the Institute for Disaster Mental Health at SUNY New Paltz. It was commissioned by the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services with support from the governor. And as I said earlier, it was conducted in 2024. So launched in February of 2024, it closed in April. We had a survey and we also ran some focus groups. And I think the impetus was really a concern at the state level about mental health of first responders and understanding that this is an important issue, it's a serious issue, and it's an issue that needs attention. And I think that the Division of Homeland Security really wanted to understand the parameters of it, what it looked like, what people were struggling with, what the barriers were to seeking care, so that they could understand and then think strategically about how to craft programming to address the issues that were surfaced in the needs assessment. So that's where the motivation came from. And let's see. So we, as I said, we launched a survey in February of 2024. We got over 6,000 respondents, which was great. It's a really great response to a survey. And so when we finally cleaned everything and the final sample ended up being just over 6,000. The EMS sample, so that was first responders as a whole, just the EMS on their own was 2,230. So that's a good number of people who feel strongly enough about this issue to answer questions and to participate in a study that would tell us about their mental health and how much that impacts them. We then also conducted focus groups over the summer to get more nuanced information about some of the issues that we were seeing in the data.
And for the data, what was most surprising or concerning results of the study?
So I would say that I'm not sure that anything was surprising necessarily. But there were a lot of poignant results. And I would say that some of the most important things fell out. I would say there are like 3 or 4 big categories of findings. So first of all, the research shows that first responders and EMS as part of that group are struggling with mental health. There were many stressors that are affecting their mental health and many mental health challenges as a result of their work. For EMS in particular, reports of depression and PTSD were higher relative to all first responders. And as I said earlier, one of the more poignant pieces of data was around thoughts of suicide. So we asked respondents about whether they had ever thought about suicide as a part of their work, as a result of their work. And 20% of EMS respondents said that they had, compared to 16% of all first responders in the study. So that's poignant. That's pretty significant. And that's something that we need to pay attention to. We learned about the stressors of first responder work. So some of those things are obvious, like there's stress from traumatic events. That's not something that's new. But one thing that we learned a lot about was the stress from what I like to think about as like the slow burn of a workplace. So things like overtime and long shifts. And a lot of people talked about low pay and how those kinds of things and those challenging work environments really add to the burden that they face. There was one quote that I just like to read because it just really epitomizes how these workplace challenges really affected people. This one person said, "There's a lot of stress from mandated overtime Okay, so this person talked about mandated overtime and the physical toll of working a double shift. He said, so there's a lot of toll from working a double shift, particularly when followed by a regular shift, an 8-hour shift that turns into 16 hours, the use of caffeine to stay awake, the use of alcohol to wind down, sleep schedules interrupted, family responsibilities reshuffled, and often just a few hours between the end of an overtime shift and the beginning of a regularly scheduled one." And you can hear the breathlessness in that. What it takes to keep going, the use of caffeine to stay awake, alcohol to wind down. I mean, that plays into other mental health issues that we're seeing and mental health struggles. And that to me was particularly poignant about the ways that the pace of the work of a first responder's work can really influence their health. Another really important issue was that there are substantial barriers to seeking care. So stigma is a big one. I think that wouldn't really surprise anyone. But the fear that others will think that they're weak, that their colleagues won't be able to depend on them. I mean, those are things that are keeping people from seeking care. There was also a lot of fear of professional repercussions. So there was this concern that if someone went to seek mental health care and it was discovered, they would then be on late duty, that they might lose their pistol license. And all of these things were things that first responders were thinking about and that were preventing them from then seeking mental health care that they knew that they needed. And then also a lack of culturally competent clinicians is a barrier. So a feeling that if someone went to see a clinician, that clinician wouldn't really understand what first responders go to, and that would mean they wouldn't be able to relate to them and wouldn't be able to get the real care and help that they needed to seek. That they needed. So I think that those are kind of the main kind of high level outcomes that we saw that were really pervasive and that were really important and that we can act upon.
Yeah, it's a lot of more, I'm glad it's being discussed now and I'm glad it's being studied more. Alanna, how does this study relate to the experiences you see in New York State and beyond in the nation?
Yeah. So, when I first read the study, I was exploding a little bit on the inside because I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just putting numbers to something that we know has been existing, but it gave that sense of validity, that sense of feeling seen, that, oh my gosh, yes, finally somebody has put the work in, or a group of people have put the work in to show that what we're experiencing is extremely real and dangerous. And so, a lot of the layers and a lot of what, Robin has mentioned here are things that we were seeing that we didn't necessarily have the proof of. But what getting those numbers and seeing those numbers has done has allowed us to say, okay, so this is happening. It's real. How do we respond? Right. So what can we do to make sure that our members are feeling entitled and empowered to speak up if they're having mental health struggles? What does it look like for somebody in the field? What are the differences between the different fields, comparing perhaps somebody who's fire-based versus EMS? And one of the things that struck me was, because I also represent emergency dispatchers within my local and around the country, is that emergency dispatchers were ranking so high in so many of these mental health categories. And I personally had a little bit of a blind spot to that, because you're not thinking about dispatchers necessarily as having the ones that are out there encountering the traumatic events the way that, someone like me who's out there in the field is used to seeing all the things. But then it made me realize and feel a greater sense of obligation almost to the dispatchers who are hearing these things happening. And then their imagination is creating the rest. And that is just as traumatic, right? And that is just as horrible. And then they are not being given the same debriefings and resources in the majority of time. In many places and nationally, dispatchers aren't even recognized as first responders. And so, just seeing this additional layer, that was for me really not necessarily surprising. I think I surprised myself in having had that blind spot, even having local, members of my local who are dispatchers, right? And so one of the things that's been really important to me throughout, being a union president and representing a large number of EMS providers is making sure that there's space for us to say things like, it's okay to not be okay, and to accept that this is part of our culture, right? And so one of the things we were able to achieve in my local a couple of years ago was writing mental health into our contract, saying, if you need mental health leave, you get it. And it can be, last minute. And if you need that assistance, that you're going to be able to ask for it and not have any repercussions from that. And that was a huge step for our local. And that's not something that is fully instituted in a lot of places. But when we see a study like this one, we can have the evidence to say this is necessary, right? So this is something that we need everywhere, in addition to all of these other things. And, another thing that Robin mentioned was culturally competent care providers. That's huge for my members. Even if I have a member who comes to me and says, I'm struggling, a lot of them do not want to just talk to anybody. They don't want to just talk to a regular therapist. Even myself on my own mental health journey, being on the front lines of COVID, many years into my career, having my own levels of burnout and other things going on, I had to shop around a bit to find the right therapist, somebody who I felt comfortable enough with talking about some of these things where I felt like I could get what I needed out of that without, feeling either on one extreme that this person just wanted to hear my stories because they, thought it was cool and interesting, versus somebody who just didn't know how to respond in a way that I needed. And so that's a big thing. And to see that come out in data in a study is just really exciting.
Now, for your article, we wrote, the headline, normal for us. I found that to be very powerful. Can you explain what it means in this context?
Yeah, so I wrote that article after reading the study because I realized that if we're a majority, if we're ranking in higher than 50% in a lot of categories that were studied, then that means that by majority, most of us have some type of level of stress. PTSD was one of the things that was highly ranked, maybe not a majority, but was a struggle within our community. Disproportionate rates in first responders of suicide and suicidal ideation, and all of these things. We treat them as anomalies culturally, right? Oh no, you're suicidal. There's something wrong. We need to fix it. You're an individual with a problem. Or, oh no, PTSD and stress are affecting you. You're burnt out. We need to fix it. You have a problem. And while that's true, and like these things can become problematic, what's important to recognize is that it's not an individual issue. This is something that we all are going to experience. If you're in this career for long enough, you will experience these things. And so that means it's normal. That means that by definition, right, to experience some symptom of PTSD, some type of flashback, some sleep disturbance, something like that, or experience of anxiety, depression, stress, it's going to happen. It's not this might happen. No. The more likely scenario is it will happen. So being prepared for that inevitability, creating resilience, creating the structures within EMS so that we properly prepare for that inevitability. And I'm not saying that like, oh no, like we're all doomed. It's just, this is part of what we do. And to ignore it or to treat it as an anomaly, to treat it as something as not going to happen unless something horrible happens, or, maybe you'll get through it, or, it makes people feel like there's something wrong with them when it does happen, or I need to just drink and I'll get over it, or, or turn to, unhealthy behaviors to cope because, oh no, it happened to me. I'm not normal. I wasn't strong enough. I didn't have the resilience that all my coworkers had to be able to get through this. And from my own experience and talking to, other EMTs and paramedics who've been in it much longer, my better experience is when I was like, oh no, it's happening to me. I can't believe I'm this burnt out. I can't believe I'm struggling with, post-traumatic injury or other things, was, oh yeah, I've been there. This is what happens after you have this horrible thing happen, or just chronically, you're just exposed over time to just thing after thing after thing after thing. It's going to get to you, and that's okay. So let's talk about it. Let's figure out what works for you. And so it was just normal. I just needed to like really hammer in on that. Like I was like, this is normal. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Talk about it. Being okay is not okay, right? I think that's a fair statement. I know a lot of us say that it's okay to be not okay, and you got to talk it out. Yeah. Before we leave, I want to give Robin some final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, those are some really important points that you're making, Alanna, and I think that was part of the motivation of having this study done, was to get the information out there and to show people this is part of our world. This is what first responders are experiencing. And if this is where we are, then what are we going to do about it? And how are we going to affect the change? And how are we going to help first responders proactively? And then when there's a crisis and when they find that they need help. So you're raising some really important points. And I do think that this is the beginning of many, many conversations about this really important issue. And I know that the state is looking at different ways to use the data to find solutions. I know there's now a focus on cultural competence in clinicians. There are some programs that are beginning to start around training therapists in first responders and to understand a first responder world better. There's definitely some movement around peer support. And I think that this is a really important step towards finding different ways to help support the community. And it's great to hear from you as a first responder, and then also as a leader in that area, and your ideas for the ways that the leadership can really focus on this. That's another really important thing that people raised a lot, that we have to have support from the leadership. And once there's support from the leadership, other dimensions will follow. And so to see that from you and to see that from the state, it's heartening.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. Heartening for sure. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap here is a good place to stop. This is a an extremely important conversation to have, and it's actually a good stopping point, because in our next talk, we're going to be talking about solutions to a problem. So please be on the lookout for that when this episode drops. I want to again give thanks to both Robin and Alanna for being here today. This is an extremely important conversation, and I hope to continue this conversation soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alanna.
Thank you.
Always
Robin.
nice to work with you.
Yes, you too.